Welcome back. This is another episode of Biology Shorts. This one is specifically on antibiotics and how they relate to the immune system and viruses and bacteria. So, the first understanding is that antibiotics block processes that occur in prokaryotic cells, but not in eukaryotic cells. So, let's get into that a little bit more. So, you first need to know the difference between a prokaryote and a eukaryote. These are two different types of cells that exist. Prokaryotes are simpler. Typically, they're bacterial in nature, so it'll be a bacteria cell. And their cell wall is made out of sugar and amino acids. So, sugar and proteins. Remember, amino acids build up proteins. Then we have eukaryotes, and eukaryotes are found in more complex creatures. So, animal cells are an example, plants are an example, a lot more organelles and functioning. So, now that we know what a prokaryote is and what bacteria is a prokaryote, we can talk about antibiotics. So, antibiotics work in the body by blocking some sort of function in the bacteria, and usually it's the metabolism that the bacteria has. So, for example, if they're doing a catabolic process of breaking something down or an anabolic process of building something up, like their, for example, cell wall, the antibiotics will block those functions. Another understanding is that viruses lack a metabolism, when we talk about catabolism and anabolism. And so viruses cannot be treated with antibiotics. And some strains of bacteria have evolved with genes that confer resistance to antibiotics. And some strains of bacteria have multiple resistance. So we're going to talk about that. First, we're going to talk about virus metabolism. So, viruses cannot be killed off by antibiotics because they don't have their own metabolism, and antibiotics attack metabolism in bacteria. So, because viruses use the metabolisms of the cells they infect, like for example, if you get a virus, it infects your own cells, and antibiotics only stop a bacteria's ability to break down or build up proteins. So, if antibiotics worked on viruses, that would mean it's harming our own cells because the virus uses our own cells by taking them over and then uses their processes of metabolism. So antibiotics won't break down our metabolic processes, only those found in bacteria. That's why they do not work in viruses. There's also antibiotic resistance that we have to worry about. So, bacteria are consistently becoming more resistant to antibiotics. Antibiotics might be something that you take for a urinary tract infection or a sinus infection, but the bacteria that infects us is becoming more resistant to those medications that we're using, and that's for a few reasons. So, antibiotic resistance is natural. It's usually caused by mutations and adaptations, but this process, doesn't take forever, but takes a while. But when we overuse antibiotics, we have accelerated antibiotic resistance because we kill off all the non resistant bacteria. And all we leave is the resistant bacteria, and then we don't have medication to treat it. Another thing you need to know is how we can apply this knowledge. And one of the applications we need to look at is Florey and Chain's experiment testing penicillin on bacterial infections in mice. So, these two scientists were able to isolate penicillin from a fungus. And penicillin is an antibiotic chemical. So, in order to test penicillin in like the 1930s or so, they injected the 8 mice with a lethal, dose of bacteria. So, 4 of the mice also got injected with penicillin, the antibiotic. So, those that didn't get the penicillin died, and those that did lived. So this was too small of a this was too small of a scale of study to move on to human testing, but they did. 1930s, again, they didn't, have as many precautions. So they went straight into human testing after only testing it on 8 mice. And, that's not great. So that's something you need to be aware of when looking at scientific experiments. Did they have a big enough animal sample? And did they have enough human samples before going and releasing something to the public? And that is all for this one. Let me know if you have any questions.